Freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control everything. There's a strange kind of peace that slips in, not loudly but gently. The very moment you loosen your grip on life, you stop forcing, you stop resisting, and in that stillness, you realize control was never safety. It was just tension dressed up as responsibility. Worry is like a cage made of shadows. It convinces you that unless you plan every detail, fix every outcome, and think 10 steps ahead, something will go wrong. So you tighten, you hold on. You spend your days rehearsing future disasters that haven't even happened. And in doing so, you miss the only thing that's real, this moment. But here's what Zen teaches us. Life already knows how to flow. The river doesn't need your hand to move. The seed doesn't need your push to sprout. The sunrise doesn't ask you for instructions. It just rises. Letting go doesn't mean you give up. It means you finally trust that life has its own rhythm. And maybe, just maybe, it's wiser than your plans. I remember once clinging so tightly to a decision, afraid that if I let go, everything would fall apart. But the truth was, it was already falling apart because of the way I was holding it. The tighter I gripped, the more drained I felt. The moment I finally breathed and let it be, something shifted. The situation didn't magically fix itself, but I began to see clearly. I stopped fighting and started flowing. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. But if you open your palms, it stays. So ask yourself gently, what am I gripping too tightly today? What would it feel like to soften, even just a little? Remember this, you don't need to control the ocean to sail. You just need to learn how to ride the waves. Life was never asking you to hold it all together. It was asking you to trust. Let go, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to. Stay with me, because what you'll hear next might be the reason your heart clicked on this video. But what exactly are we clinging to so tightly? And why does it feel so hard to let go? To understand that, we need to look deeper into the silent forces that shape our reality from within. 1. Fear is a seed. Fear isn't just something we feel, it's something we plant. And like any seed, it grows quietly, in shadows, beneath the surface of our everyday thoughts. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like soil. It doesn't choose what seeds we plant. Whether it's peace or fear, kindness or resentment, it nurtures them all. And the truth is, we plant these seeds every single day, often without knowing. You're afraid of being abandoned, so you cling tighter. You're afraid of failure, so you hold back, overthink, stay small. And slowly, without realizing, you start living as if the thing you fear is already happening. That's the paradox of fear. It doesn't just chase us, it shapes us. It colors how we speak, love, decide, and even dream. We start walking toward the very thing we most want to avoid. In relationships, fear of loss leads to control, suspicion, neediness, which often pushes others away. At work, fear of failure keeps us playing safe, staying silent, and so we shrink the life we could have lived. Buddhism doesn't tell us to kill fear. Instead, mindfulness invites us to meet it like a lost child, not with punishment, but with presence. Because when we look directly at our fear, without judgment, without running, it loses its grip. Ask yourself gently, what fears have I been watering? And what might grow if I stopped? You are not your fear. You are the gardener. And in this very breath, you can choose to plant something else. Lesson 2, the burden of imagined fear. Most of our anxiety doesn't come from what's actually happening, but from what might happen. The truth is, many of the things we carry so heavily never even occur. Yet our mind, left unobserved, spins them into reality. It becomes like a novelist obsessed with tragedy, constantly scripting the worst-case scenario, scene by scene, without pause. All it takes is one thought. What if they leave me? What if I fail? What if everything falls apart? And suddenly your body tenses, your chest tightens, your breath shortens. You're no longer here, in the present. You're lost in a movie your mind is directing, a film that plays on loop without ever asking for your permission. But just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves your belief. Buddhist wisdom reminds us the mind creates stories, but we are not obligated to live inside all of them. Thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They pass. But when we cling to them, we mistake them for storms. Think about it. How many conversations have you feared would go wrong, only for them to turn out just fine? How many times did you brace for the worst, only to realize there was nothing to fear at all? This is the trap of imagined fear. It makes shadows look solid. It convinces you to prepare for disasters that don't exist, react to threats that haven't arrived, and carry burdens that were never meant for your shoulders. Zen teaches us to return to what is real. Right here, right now. Not what could happen or might go wrong, but what is. The breath, the stillness, the gentle rise and fall of this very moment. You are not the stories your mind creates. You are the one who notices them. And in that noticing, there is freedom. You can begin to see thoughts like leaves on a river. Some light, some heavy. Some helpful, others not. But you are not the leaf. You are the water beneath it. Flowing, unmoved, awake. The more you practice this awareness, the lighter your spirit becomes. You stop trying to control what hasn't happened. You stop bracing for pain that may never arrive. And slowly, peace returns. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. So the next time fear whispers a story in your mind, pause, breathe. Gently ask, is this happening now, or am I just imagining it? You may find the truth is much softer than the version your mind created. And perhaps, if we can learn to put down even just one imagined burden, a very different life begins to unfold. Lesson 3. Anxiety lives in tomorrow. Peace breathes in now. When we start to let go of the stories our mind creates, something surprising happens. Silence becomes louder. But silence isn't empty. It's full of presence. And in that presence, we find what we've been searching for all along. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't ask you to change your life, just to be present for it. Because here's the truth. Anxiety can't survive in the present moment. It lives in the future. In possibilities, predictions, what-ifs, and imagined outcomes. It feeds on projection. It thrives when your mind drifts away from what is into what might be. Buddhist teachings remind us that suffering isn't just caused by pain. It's caused by our resistance to what is. And nothing resists reality more than anxiety. It tries to rewrite the future, control the unknown, and escape discomfort before it even arrives. But the present moment asks for nothing. It simply is. No pressure, no predictions, no performance. When you come back to now, you come home. That's what mindfulness truly is, not some mystical technique, but the simple act of returning to your breath, to your body, to this moment exactly as it is. And here's the miracle. When you do that, even for a few seconds, anxiety softens. Because right here, right now, you're okay. You're breathing. You're alive. You're not broken. You're not late. You're just here. And that's enough. It's like standing in the eye of the storm. Everything may swirl around you, your to-do list, your fears, your regrets, but the center remains still. That center is this breath, this second, this now. Most of us spend our days in time travel, replaying the past or rehearsing the future. But peace is never found in a memory or a prediction. Peace is always hiding in plain sight, in the only place we never think to look, now. Mindfulness doesn't mean you won't ever feel anxious again. It simply means that when anxiety comes, you'll know the way back. You'll know how to pause, how to breathe, how to return to the only place where life is actually happening. And perhaps that's the greatest freedom of all. Not escaping your life, but entering it fully. Not running from fear, but standing in your own presence with gentleness and clarity. Because when you choose to stay in this moment, you reclaim your power, and every breath becomes a quiet revolution. Stay with me, because what unfolds next might not just change how you think, but how you feel. Ever wondered why some thoughts feel heavier than others, even when nothing has really happened yet? Let's take one more step inward. Something unexpected is waiting. Lesson 4. True strength is found in surrender. We've been taught that strength looks like holding on, holding your ground, holding your position, holding everything together, even when you're falling apart inside. But Zen whispers a different kind of wisdom. It tells us, strength isn't about how tightly you grip. It's about how gracefully you let go. Not giving up, but giving over. Not losing control, but releasing the illusion that you ever truly had it. In a world obsessed with outcomes and perfection, surrender can feel like weakness. But what if surrender isn't a collapse, but a conscious choice to stop fighting life and start flowing with it? Think of water. It yields, but it never breaks. It curves around resistance, carves canyons, nourishes mountains, and reaches the ocean, without ever needing to force its way. Water never resists what is. It simply adapts and moves, and so can we. Buddhism reminds us, life has its own rhythm, its own karma. You plant the seed, yes, you water it, you nourish the soil, but you don't pull at the roots every day to make it grow faster. True strength lies in this balance, showing up fully, then letting go gently. Doing your part, then stepping back with trust. We try to control because we fear. Fear that if we don't grip tight enough, we'll lose what we love. But here's the truth that most of us learn too late. The tighter you hold, the faster things slip away. Whether it's a relationship, a dream, a plan, you can suffocate it with your need to fix, to force, to perfect. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start trusting. You trust the timing. You trust the process. You trust that you don't need to bend the universe to your will in order to be okay. Letting go is an act of quiet confidence. I've done what I can. Now I release what isn't mine to carry. And in that release, something beautiful happens. Space opens up. Your breath deepens. Your energy returns. Opportunities arise not because you chase them, but because you made room for them. You become less of a storm and more like the sky that holds it. Vast, steady, unmoved. So if you're tired of carrying it all, perhaps the bravest thing you can do right now is to set it down. Not with defeat, but with peace. Because maybe real strength isn't in how much you can carry, but in how gently you're willing to let go. But even after we learn to let go, another question quietly lingers in the background. If I stop trying to control everything, what will guide me? And that's where faith begins, not in knowing, but in trusting. Lesson 5. Faith can't breathe under control. You can't hold the steering wheel of life with one hand and say, I trust the universe, with the other. Real trust doesn't coexist with gripping. Because the need to control is rarely about clarity, it's almost always about fear. Fear that if we stop planning, something will fall apart. Fear that if we stop fixing, no one else will. Fear that if we don't hold it all together, everything will unravel. But here's the paradox. The more tightly you try to control the path, the more disconnected you become from the deeper rhythm that's trying to carry you. Control is loud. It's full of tension, effort, overthinking, and exhaustion. But faith is quiet. It moves like a breeze, gentle, invisible. It doesn't shout, it waits. Buddhist wisdom teaches that clinging is suffering. Not just clinging to things or people, but clinging to outcomes, to certainty, to how things should unfold. And yet, life rarely listens to our shoulds. You can do everything right and still not get the result you hoped for. You can plan perfectly and still be caught off guard. Because life isn't a machine, it's a mystery, and in mystery, control has very little power. But faith is what breathes in the dark. It's what holds you when logic doesn't. It's the quiet whisper, I've done my part, now I let go. Letting go in this context isn't giving up. It's letting go of the illusion that your value, your peace, or your worth depends on the outcome. It's placing the seed in the soil, nurturing it, and then trusting the rain, the sun, the time it needs to grow. But how do you know if you're controlling or trusting? Ask yourself this. Are you constantly checking, refreshing, overanalyzing, running conversations in your head on repeat? These are signs that fear is at the wheel, disguised as being responsible. True responsibility is doing what you can with full presence and then letting the rest unfold. It's the courage to say, I don't know how this ends, but I won't live as if the worst is already happening. We were not meant to micromanage life like a fragile equation. We were meant to move with it like a river, responding, adjusting, flowing. There's a profound kind of wisdom that only comes when we stop interfering, when we stop trying to figure it all out and instead learn to be with what is. Faith in Buddhism isn't blind belief. It's intimate trust in the law of cause and effect. Do your part and let karma unfold. It's also trust in your own deeper knowing, the part of you that isn't panicked but patient, not rushing but rooted. And so maybe the most powerful move isn't forcing clarity, but creating space for clarity to come. Maybe the greatest strength isn't perfect control, but imperfect trust. Because life rarely gives you all the answers up front. It gives you moments, signs, whispers. And when you learn to listen without demanding, you begin to hear them more clearly. So today, loosen your grip. Not because you're careless, but because you're finally learning to trust. There's a kind of fear that wears a clever disguise. It doesn't scream or panic. It organizes, manages, plans. It stays up late fixing things. It replays conversations. It double-checks everything twice. It calls itself responsibility. But deep down, it's just fear. Fear of uncertainty. Fear of losing. Fear that if you don't hold everything together, it will all fall apart. And so, we control. We tighten our grip. On people, on outcomes, on timing. We tell ourselves, if I just work harder, try harder, think harder, maybe nothing will go wrong. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, the tighter you hold, the more you suffer. Not because things fall apart, but because you've forgotten how to trust. Faith cannot live in a clenched hand. It needs space. It needs quiet. It needs room to breathe. In Buddhism, faith is not a blind leap, it's a quiet knowing, a trust in cause and effect. Do your part, walk mindfully, and let the rest unfold. It's the deep, inner sense that life has its own intelligence, that you don't always have to push for things to move. Imagine holding a small bird in your palm. If you squeeze too hard, you'll harm it. But if you leave your hand open, it might stay, or it might fly. Either way, it's free, and so are you. Control says, if I let go, I'll lose everything. But trust whispers, if I let go, maybe something new can finally arrive. And it's true. There's risk in surrender. You might not get the outcome you imagined, but you'll gain something deeper. Peace. Because peace doesn't come from managing every detail. It comes from not needing to. It's okay to care deeply. It's okay to try your best. But there comes a moment when holding on turns into holding back. When your effort becomes a cage. And what you really need is to open the door. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means handing back what was never yours to carry alone. And maybe, just maybe, when you create that space, faith finds its way in. Once we begin to loosen the grip of control and lean into trust, something quiet begins to shift. At first, it feels like uncertainty, but soon it begins to feel like flow. And that's when we realize life has been waiting to carry us all along. We just needed to stop standing in the way. Lesson 6, when you stop resisting, life begins to flow. The more you interfere, the more resistance you create. The more you force, the more chaos you invite. And yet we keep trying, tweaking, managing, adjusting, believing that if we just do a little more, push a little harder, everything will finally fall into place. But what if life isn't asking to be controlled? What if it's asking to be trusted? There's a quiet wisdom in knowing when to stop intervening, when to stop pulling at threads, when to stop fixing what isn't broken, just uncomfortable. In Buddhism, this isn't laziness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that not everything in life needs your hands on it to move forward. Some things grow better when left alone. Some people return when you stop chasing. Some doors open the moment you stop knocking. When we interfere, it's often from fear that nothing will happen without us. But in truth, our interference often delays the very outcome we long for. Because control sends the signal, I don't trust this. And trust is what creates space for life to flow. Imagine a river. You don't have to dig the channel deeper or force the water forward. You simply have to stop throwing rocks into its path. You have to stop building dams made of worry and overthinking. When you finally step back, life steps in. It brings the people you need, not the ones you clung to. It brings timing that makes sense in hindsight, not in your schedule. It brings grace, but only when you stop blocking the door. And yes, stepping back is uncomfortable. It requires patience. It requires trust in outcomes you can't yet see. But it's in that soft space, that holy pause, that everything begins to breathe. Life doesn't flow because you force it. It flows because you allow it. You stop interrupting. You stop manipulating. And instead you begin to listen. You start noticing things you missed while you were too busy controlling. The synchronicities, the unexpected solutions, the support you never thought would come. This is not a call to passivity. It's a call to participation with presence, not panic. A call to do what's yours to do and leave the rest to life's quiet intelligence. Because what's meant for you is not built on effort alone. It's built on openness. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to stop doing so much. So ask yourself, where am I trying to force something that may be ready to flow? If only I'd get out of the way. Let go, not to escape life, but to finally let it reach you. Lesson 6, letting go is how you begin to grow. We often think that growth looks like doing more, achieving more, reaching higher. But sometimes growth looks like softening, like releasing the need to control, like letting go of the weight you've carried for far too long. Anxiety shrinks your world without you noticing. It tells you to aim smaller, speak quieter, and feel less, just to stay safe. Slowly, your dreams get trimmed down to realistic goals. Your voice dims into silence, and your heart, once open and alive, curls inward to avoid pain. But that's not growth, that's survival. Buddhist wisdom reminds us to grow is to trust, and trust only becomes possible when we release fear. When you let go, something extraordinary happens. Not outside, but inside. You make space, space for courage to stretch out, space for creativity to return, space for joy to find its way home. Letting go isn't a defeat, it's a sacred invitation for life to move freely through you again. Imagine holding on to a rope that's burning your hands. The longer you cling, the deeper the pain. But the moment you release, healing begins. That's what letting go feels like. It stings at first, but then suddenly you can breathe again. And maybe that's the real measure of growth. Not how much you've achieved, but how much you've softened. Not how much you've gathered, but how deeply you've surrendered to the present. Because real strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet willingness to let things be as they are. So today, ask yourself gently, what have I been gripping too tightly? And what might blossom if I finally let it go? Stay with me, because the next lesson touches something even deeper within us. Lesson 8. Impermanence is the truth. Letting go is wisdom. We spend much of our lives trying to hold on to people, to feelings, to moments we wish could last forever. But Buddhist wisdom begins with one simple, powerful truth. Everything changes. Nothing lasts. This is the law of impermanence, or anicca. It may sound harsh at first, but it is not cruelty, it is clarity. When we forget impermanence, we suffer twice. First, when things slip away, as they inevitably do, and second, because we thought they wouldn't. We believed love should stay the same, health would always be with us, joy wouldn't fade. But life has never promised us permanence, it only offers presence. The more we cling, the more we hurt. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. But if you open your palm, gently, the sand rests quietly, without struggle. That's the art of letting go, not rejection, not apathy, but the deep wisdom of holding lightly what was never ours to keep. This doesn't mean you stop loving or caring. It means you love with open hands and soft expectations. You cherish each moment without demanding it to stay. You understand that every sunrise, every smile, every shared silence is a guest, beautiful and brief. Impermanence isn't a reason to despair. It's the reason to appreciate. When we realize that every experience is temporary, we stop wasting time resisting change. We start living more fully, more honestly. We start saying, thank you, instead of, don't leave. This kind of wisdom softens us. It teaches us to walk through life with more grace, to greet loss without bitterness, and to let joy in without grasping. To live with impermanence is to stop asking life to be something it's not. It's learning to flow with the river instead of building dams around every moment. And in that flow, we discover a different kind of freedom, not from emotion, but from illusion, not from love, but from possession. Let go, not because you're cold, but because you're wise enough to know nothing truly beautiful was ever meant to stay. Keep breathing with me. The next lesson invites us to meet fear with a strength you may have forgotten you had. Lesson 9. Beyond the self. Peace begins when the ego ends. When we begin to accept impermanence, something else quietly rises to the surface, the illusion of a fixed self. In Buddhist wisdom, this is called anatta, or non-self. It is one of the most challenging and liberating truths we can encounter. We spend our lives protecting an identity. This is who I am. But who is that really? A collection of thoughts, emotions, memories, and habits, all of which are constantly shifting, never truly stable. Yet we cling to this I as if it were solid. And from that clinging, so much suffering is born. We say, I was hurt, I was disrespected, I need to prove I'm right. But what if those are just clouds passing through the sky of your awareness? What if you are not the storm, but the sky itself, vast, open, unshaken? Letting go of the ego is not about disappearing. It's about expanding. It's about loosening the grip on your self-image so life can breathe through you. When you no longer need to win every argument, defend every opinion, or always be someone, peace finds room to enter. Think of the moments you felt most free. Were they moments when you impressed others? Or were they moments when you forgot yourself, watching the ocean, holding someone's hand, laughing without reason? The ego wants control, validation, and certainty, but the heart seeks presence, connection, and stillness. When you release the need to be somebody, you become available to everything. You listen deeper, you react less, you see more. You move through life not as a warrior defending identity, but as a pilgrim walking lightly, with openness and curiosity. This doesn't mean losing your voice or boundaries. It means speaking without needing to dominate, loving without needing to possess, existing without needing applause. When you let go of ego, you don't disappear. You return to something far more real. Life was never a battle you had to win. It's a rhythm you're invited to flow with. And that rhythm, the one Buddhism gently points to, is not about giving up, but letting go with awareness. It's not about caring less, but learning to care with clarity. It's not about losing control, but realizing you never needed to hold so tightly in the first place. We spend our lives trying to manage, fix, force, people, outcomes, emotions, the future. But the harder we grip, the more we lose touch with the present. And the truth is, peace doesn't come when we have everything under control. Peace comes when control is no longer necessary. Letting go is not weakness, it's a quiet kind of strength. The strength to trust the unfolding, to loosen our grip, and to make space for something deeper to arrive. And when it does, when stillness fills the space where fear once lived, you begin to touch a freedom that no outcome could ever give you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You only need to be here, fully, gently, honestly. One breath at a time. So if this message touched your heart, take a moment, like the video, subscribe for more reflections rooted in wisdom and inner peace, and share this with someone you care about. Sometimes a single quiet word is all it takes to remind someone they are not alone. We'll meet again, somewhere on the path of slowing down, showing up, and coming home to yourself.